a.m. and W2OY said, we don't want to talk to any kids, lids, or space cadets. And if you may remember that call, and there was a pushback against Slop Bucket. There's a pushback against Packet. There was a pushback against FTA. And we need to start leaving our biases behind and say, hey, look it, if somebody has an interest in some aspect of ham radio, it doesn't matter if we don't like it. If they like it and it gets them interested and using it, let's embrace them and, you know, and not be, there's too many experts on the internet so that have opinions. So any event, moving along here, whoops. We've got to hit the wrong button, of course. That's because I can't see what I'm doing, which is probably par for the course. Let's move along. All right, there's Bob. All right, so other uses, we've got weather reports and forecasts. At one point, the club was going to promote a balloon, and for a number of reasons, we got away from that. And of course, you know, there's bulletins, there's telemetry, and last but not least, the International Space Station carries an APRS repeater and an APRS messaging system along with its normal crew. And again, thank Bob Berniga for that we have that. And I hope that you can see that this is more than just having a system of communication. The fact that ham radio is on the International Space Station is a benefit to the entire hobby. And please understand that we are under attack right now. We're under attack by every commercial interest that wants a piece of our spectrum. And things like the International, and so the International Space Station having ham radio and speaking to not just APRS, but speaking to students throughout the United States and throughout the world benefits us, in any organization that promotes that, like APRS or the League, needs to be supported. Irrespective of whatever some of the politics are, we need a voice in Washington, and we need to keep amateur radio in the forefront, and we need to be useful in case the internet goes down as well. So any event, let's move along a little bit. So some of the advantages, and excuse that print, you know, the APRS, we can have messages that can move relatively quickly through a network. Again, we're very dependent at this point on the internet to do that, but we don't need to be because the equipment is relatively inexpensive. It's not expensive, hard to set up. We could talk with short messages or short emails through APRS. I'm going to get to WinLink in a moment. And we could be entirely free of the internet. But we have a problem around here. And the problem is those digipeaters have disappeared. And unless you could get to Dana's digipeater or K1AEV, B1AEV, or unless you can get to Summers, and the bulletin boards have disappeared and other ways of communication has. And maybe it's time to do something about that. So how to get on or what kind of hardware? Well, you know, you could start out, you know, with, I have a couple of these radios, this Kenwood, actually got 3 of them. They were $700 in 2013. That's a long dollar for a lot of folks, right? Or the new, I don't know if you've seen the new Kenwood, $750. That's pretty hard to take for some folks. But how about that UV5R? You know, Bofang gets a bad rap because, hey, let's face it, it's a mediocre radio, but it works. And so you could take a UV5R, a $6 cable, or If you don't like cables, here's a cheap $20 Bluetooth dongle. There's more expensive ones than that. And an Android tablet, or now, if you have an iOS device, you could use iOS as well. And now you are on APRS. And by the way, here's a dirty little secret. I hate to say this, you don't even need a radio. You could go on just simply with the right app, your cell phone. Now you have to register your call, just like Echolink and things like that. But in ways of community, shouldn't we all have something like that in our pocket if we don't have our HT with us? So that's, some of the hardware, but you connect your radio in a number of different ways. Well, you can have a $20 cable from or cheaper from BTEC. Another thing you can use here is a DigiRig, that big. It's a sound card. All right, it's a little sound card, and it comes with a bunch of cables, or you could buy them interfaced with any radio they make. But how many, if you got a newer radio, you got a 7300, a 7100, a 705. What sort of distinguishes some of those radios? They have a built-in sound card. So you don't even need that. You need essentially a USB cable. Another thing for handy talkies that you could use as is a mobile link. It's basically a TNC or a terminal. It's an interface that essentially does the work of some software. We used to call them terminal node controllers. It was the guy who invented it. And so essentially you can use something like this. And to go a long way, here's an extra battery, that you could connect. But you might have one of these things laying around the shack, a signal link. Use that. So all sorts of ways you could connect to your PC or to your Android phone, or here's a $19 Android tablet. Hey, for those of you that have Macs and you say, I want something cheap or whatever, you can use this. Have you ever heard of an Evolve PC, an Evolve 3? It's an $85 PC. It's got a sound card. It runs Windows 11. It'll handle anything the simple kinds of programs for ham radio. So any of that, different ways to connect, let's see, let's get rid of that, whatever popped up there. And somehow we're not moving to the next slide. Okay, let's see. All right, so you need a handheld radio, a cable, you got a so there's not anybody in this room that couldn't get on APRS probably right now or as soon as they got home. So software, by the way, helps, right? And so let's talk about the different kind of software that you can have to do this and more. Well, if you have, how many people have Android phones in the room? About half. Free application, APRS Droid. Absolutely no charge, got to register for it. All right, but if you have an iOS or just strictly any kind, as well as iOS, this is a web-based. APRS Phi is for a modest amount, you could buy that you don't need to pay for it on your PC, but it is now available for your iOS device. And by the way, one of the issues that some people had was that, well, I still need some kind of a cable. Well, now with the new Bluetooth devices that are out there, that they'll talk to your iOS devices. Apple had sort of a little bit different, more advanced protocol for low power Bluetooth. that not every device could talk to, but you can. So how about you got a PC, you don't want to buy an external what they call a terminal node controller. That was that thing that we had in the old days. Well, you can get a piece of software, freeware. There's a number of them out there. For Windows, it's called Sound Modem. There's others called Direwolf. And it's, where you could use it on various, Direwolf you could use on more than one platform. You could use it on Linux, and you can use it on, I think, iOS as well in Windows. And then, there's also other sound card packet software. Now, APRS, as great as it is only good for short messages and very short emails. But what happened, and it's essentially, even though in theory it can be used on other bands, essentially it's a VHF and UHF protocol. So what happens if we want to go beyond that? By just a little bit screenshot of APRS Droid. One of the things that when you get the app, if you're not familiar with it, and I know many of you are, is that you get to see the stations in the area that are reporting. So if you were to go on and you could actually do like a history. So if you put in my call, you might see that I was on and put it 5 days ago. Or you could see, hey, what's going on in the next 15 minutes or last 15 minutes. So in any event, you get a little bit of a screenshot, and I said, no radio, no problem. All you need to do is register. This is a little bit what APRS 5 looks like, and there's sort of a recent picture there. Sorry for the graphic, but some of your calls just might be up there. So for those that haven't been on in a while, the calling or the standard frequency in the United States for APRS is 144.39. And because you're going to be communicating with the way things move from one place to another is through digipeating, which means is getting your signal or your report repeated. And so it's called a path. And you want to have your path such that if there's a number of stations in the area, you don't want your thing repeated too many times, because if everybody's doing that, it's going to sort of clog up the system and nobody's going to get through. So the path that's recommended for locally is, and this is what you would put into your system, wide 1, wide 2, which essentially means that you're not going to get more than, say, 2 hops, and your will be repeated, through 2 different units. Now, we had, as you probably know, that it reports positions and as well. And we think about how far we had come. When Bob initially developed APRS, if you didn't know if you really wanted to know where you were, you needed one of these things, which was, the first Magellan GPS device that was commercially available, $2,900 in 1989. So there was a little bit out, but just like those of you that bought your first computer in the 80s and paid, nearly $4,000 for it. I remember, and you probably do as well, spending $3,500 for a computer with 2 floppy disks and no hard drive. That was an IBM clone at the time. Just like if you bought a TI calculator that you put in your 9-volt battery and the LEDs are burnt out in about, 4 or 5 hours of use, and you had to keep on. Well, we all know what happened to the prices of GPS. Now they're in every cell phone. So, but one of the sort of exciting things that there is to do with this, at least for me, and one of my interests, as you may know, is working satellites, is you could work through the ISS. And you could do it in a number. You could either try to work another station that you hear by sending them a short message, or maybe just the joy of hearing your signal digipeated through the ISS. And of course, you need to know where it is. And you could do that by either going to the amset.org or Heavens Above. There's a number of sites where if you don't even want to download software to track it, and you can tell when it's overhead, and this is the frequency, and that's the path. And it's sort of neat to see your packet returned from the International Space Station. That's what it might look like. And that's what you might see. And then you would have your call there. So, but what about, going forward? And we mentioned WinLink, but oh, excuse me, on SMS. And Marvin and I were just talking about this. It used to be very common. You were able to send an SMS message through APRS to any cell phone. And maybe about 10 months ago, that sort of disappeared. And there were maybe almost a year ago. And it disappeared because supposedly the folks running that said, well, there was spam and sexting and texting and other stuff of non-ham radio. So they shut it down. So now, if you're interested in doing this, there's a new site up. I haven't registered yet. It just came up. I can print that out, but it's connect. It's called, it's an HTTP, theconnectdesk.com/SMS. Theconnectdesk.com, and I know it's difficult to see, I apologize, /SMS. You then need to register your cell phone number to use it. And then you could then send short messages and SMS over your, yes, Dave?
Have the other person opt in.
You could send it to yourself and you could send it to people on that network. So, and I'm not familiar enough yet because it just came up to know just exactly what the limitations are. Marvin, do you know?
Not a lot right now, but it's only limited like US, Canada.
And the UK, I guess, right?
Maybe it's UK, I think
Yeah.
that's the other one. But if you go out and look up NA7Q and an APRS, all the information he has out there about it, about how to opt in, how to, opt out if you don't want to, and all your information can be found out there on it. So,
I used it.
Yeah, well, it's brand new.
Look, yeah.
Yeah, it's brand new. So good to know and to use. So let's say we want to do a little bit more than send a short message. Most of you have heard or maybe even used WinLink. And Brian, and so it's exciting that, you get global email. You're not limited. You could have, and this is especially, the WinLink software has various forms, and you could send long messages through either VHF, UHF, or through an HF WinLink portal, I'll call it, or node more accurately. So locally, we have very few WinLink nodes. And here they are, if you could hit them. There's one in Summers at 441.075. There's Dana, and from where I am, and you guys may be close, I cannot hit any of these from my house without a beam. All right, so if we want to have the ability to use global email, if we want to have the ability, we need to have some kind of a a WinLink node that, and, you know, the positive sign is having one. The negative side is if we do it on VHF only, we're essentially tied to the internet in case there's, you know, and if there is some kind of situation like we had in Hawaii, then we need to be able to reach further. Yes, Smitty?
I was doing WinLink Thursday, it's a website.
Mhm.
and they-
Oh, yeah, so well, why don't you speak up, because every
Yeah.
Thursday, there's,
Thursday, now it's a they're on a different schedule, not.
used to be WinLink Wednesday, right?
They're not the people that run it, so they had to spread out not every Wednesday. But, I was using HF, either the 20 or 40 meter band on a 10 watt Lab 599 radio with a whip antenna off the car at work at the airport in Westfield. And I was sending my WinLink through Kentucky and West Virginia and places like that. And about 300 to 600 kilometers, and it worked just fine. And yeah.
And what mode were you using, Smitty, to,
Sideband.
okay, I mean,
Not digital, I mean.
yeah.
Goes digital.
Yeah.
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 So any event, and it's relatively easy to do that. And as Smitty said, you were running 20 watts, 10 watts with a whip. So, but I think we want to have hopefully the ability to, you know, if you don't practice, when things happen, we're at a total loss. And so some folks, you know, say, why do we have these traffic nets? Oh, they're boring and nobody has any traffic. It just trying to stay sharp and using it. And, you know, when you get on like anything else that as I mentioned, I'm teaching new hams, and, you know, everybody that's new makes mistakes. And in my business, I had people work for me that are essentially advisors, but salespeople, and they'll come and, oh, things aren't going well. And I say, well, you're not failing enough. Meaning you're not, you have to keep on, you know, you have to do things a few times in order to get a confidence level. All right. Yes.
Real quick, I've got the WinLink and APRS digit meters be able to set back up again. I'm just trying to find me a mast that can get me up and get antennas up and out. So if somebody has an extra mast that they don't want anymore or laying around the backyard, let me know. But I can, once I get a mast to get something back up, I don't want to be paying the DX freight.
Well,
Not much for the freight of the mast, but
I've got
WinLink stuff to be able to locally here. So
I've got a 30-foot tower that you could have.
I've got my 50-foot tower.
All right, so yeah.
Hopefully we'll get up this spring, but yeah.
Yeah, but no mast, you know, it's, and all you need is a mast or whatever.
Yeah, telescopic map.
Because for those of you from Southampton, I'm in the historic district of Southampton, so in a 200-year-old house across from the city hall and police station, so you can't really defy anybody. All right, so what's happening here? We went from that, the TNC from MFJ, to this stuff. This is called new packet radio. These are modems as well as their low power 435 transceivers simultaneously. And I say low power, meaning like they're less than a watt right now. And in Europe, they're exploding in terms of, now why aren't they exploding here? Well, I'll tell you why. As you've been following the news recently, on HF, the FCC approved the change from this, what they call the symbol rate, which is the baud rate, to a bandwidth rate. Well, those legacy rates are still in existence. The fact that you go 1200 on 2 meters and 9600 on 432 or 435 are still in existence. And right now there's a proposal to say, hey, why not bandwidth, especially on, on 435, where you could run amateur TV that's like, 5 megahertz wide, right? Or however wide ATV is. So so these right now are limited to use, if we're going to follow the rules, to 9,600 baud. Well, they could run 500,000. All right, and depending upon how much bandwidth you give them, and of course, the more bandwidth, the faster the rate, and they're running different bandwidth in Europe. So I don't know what it's time for, like, your comments, because, and by the way, the other thing about these is, we've all heard about this mesh network that's that's developing. Well, this is like the mesh network, but it's not at the same speed of your Wi-Fi modem. It's about half that. And but multiple ones could be connected at the same time. And I guess I'll posit to you, isn't it about time, maybe that everything old becomes new again, that we, and I'm just as much as I'm at fault as anyone. I had multiple modems. I sold a KPC3, which is a Cantor that had, you could have your own little bulletin board in it. You could pick up messages back and forth. Didn't need the internet. I'm just going to suggest maybe it's time that, and that's really sort of like that, we as a club put our heads together and say, hey, do we want to set up some nodes like this? This, by the way, what's the cost of this? This, $90 for 2 of them, or I think it's fully assembled and free shipping. I thought there'd be a shipping charge. There was not even a shipping charge.
I think they're $90 a piece.
Yeah, from Europe, but it was low cost. But I got nobody to talk to except myself, unless anyone of you guys have them, right? Could talk to myself and across the room. The more you use something like that, the more you see the uses, right? The more the light bulb goes on. Just like APRS, it was just more than reporting a position. It's a way of sending messages. It's a way of getting telemetry. It's a way of knowing if you have your radio set up in your car with a call frequency on it. Somebody with APRS they could know you're there and call you, right? So any of that, number of different things. So that's pretty much just my call to action. If we want to preserve our spectrum, if we want to preserve it, basically our sort of our right to exist, we can't just be a bunch of, as somebody once said, a group of like old men, jawboning or swearing on 7,200 and listening to some of the garbage that's out there and just limiting ourselves to what we used to do and what we're comfortable doing. And either that or we're just going to end up with some slivers of the HF band. We're going to give up a lot of the wide areas that we have on VHF, UHF, and higher, because commercial interests are after all of this. Yep.
Those 2 units on the right-hand side there, what band can they be used?
These are just strictly, 435. That it's just because it's got a built-in transceiver in it. Now, who's to say that, as other uses expand or as symbol rates expand, there's probably, if they make a ruling, you might be able to use something like this on 6 meters. I doubt on 10 meters because we're limited to the bandwidth. But all of you guys know, I mean, the software engineers, what they could do with something, those of you guys that are software experts can take something and make it do more than it's supposed to. You guys may have seen one of these. This is a Quoshang. UK5R, and it's a $22 handy talkie that's being hacked and being able to do double sideband, listen to airband, doing a whole bunch of stuff that it was never intent to do. Why? Because some innovative folks with software basically opened it up. So there's a couple of versions of that. $22, a competition. One of the things, though, that I found just helpful, this is a Redivis handy talkie. I forget the nomenclature, but it runs a real 10 watts. And I put it in and it's just that extra, if you're trying to get into someplace that's a little bit further, a longer antenna and 3 dB more a lot more helpful. A couple of other things. These are micro TN. By the way, this was developed by a Dutch ham, and I'll get his call because it's written on there. F4HDK.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I said Dutch, but it's French ham, especially with the F4. One of those guys over there. The reason I said Dutch is because this is a Pico APRS, and that's a Dutch or a German guy that had these. And the newer versions are actually 1 watt handy talkies. But the battery dies. What?
Like the Bionics interface?
No, this is it's a TNC and all built in. I see the back fell off of this.
And that one is old packet radio.
Yeah, that's a 1200 baud. Yeah, AX25 1200 baud.
The new packet radio, I don't know if you mentioned this, it's its own protocol.
Yeah, and which allows a number of things to be linked up simultaneously. I didn't mention it, but that's a good point. So just, something to think about. And I hope that if you've got some old packet gear dusting, or sitting there doing nothing, maybe it's time to dig it out and make a cable and get it to work. Or if you got a phone and, and a sound card, or as I said, this is a $20 sound card essentially that plugs into your handy talkie. So let's make things work. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I hope it's been helpful. Is there any other questions that I can answer or not answer? Yeah, go ahead.
A couple of comments, because I've actually been reading about this stuff just recently because I got interested in it as well. I haven't actually bought the gear.
Mhm.
But in addition to old packet, new packet, there's also the broadband Hamnet.
Right, and mesh.
Which is mesh, which
Right,
is,
right.
it's like called 10 different things. But those are all commercial off-the-shelf products, Ubiquity routers.
Yeah, and that you hack.
Loaded a new firmware into, and it allows you to do some ham specific things with it. My understanding of the situation with this right now is.
I hit the wrong button.
There's a lot of old packet gear sitting around. And if you have it, you can put it on the air, and if like 3 other people have it in the area, you can connect up. And all the stuff that worked in 1985 still works. New packet radio limitation, especially in this country, is nobody has it except Gary. And it may not work over as long a distance through as much vegetation. These are 1/2 watt transceivers at 440.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the other thing, right now, it's limited to 9,600 baud.
It is currently limited to 9,600 baud, but my understanding is that the FCC regulation on that has been published in the federal record.
Yeah, they're waiting for its
waiting-
comments. It's
waiting for the clock to run out.
Yeah,
basically.
they're waiting for comments. And it just might happen.
So
But
probably in the next few months, we could get full speed on these,
On the VHF.
on the VHF, UHF bands.
that would be, so those are but in the meantime, let's use what we have.
Right, broadband Hamnet, that's, Wi-Fi speeds over distances of miles. If you happen to be in the Mountain West. And one thing you'll notice is that almost all the activity on that is in places that have deserts and mountains. Because as soon as you add trees, the attenuation at like 5 gigahertz is ridiculous. So I don't know if that's workable around here. I don't know if anybody's tried. But I think it would be interesting to see a head-to-head comparison of these three in realistic, northeastern terrain. If anybody's up for that.
I think to your point, it's going to evolve and over time. And if you have, I've got a couple of brand new routers that I haven't even tried using it on that were, but again, you got to have somebody to talk to. And to your point, where you see it working in Larry, I think you said there's a group in Maine that, did you tell me about that had a,
Yeah, they're doing a radio mesh network.
yeah, up there. But as you said, mountains, between one mountain and another.
That works great, yeah,
Smitty?
but
Awesome. ICOM, I believe, has DPRS instead of APRS. How's the?
I don't know the difference in the protocol,
Yes.
yeah.
but I mean, it's the same.
You're on D-Star.
Sort of.
So, any,
That's well with APRS.
I think they're bridges, gateways or something that connect them,
Here,
maybe.
Dave?
I've been able to use JSA call at 20 meters
Mm-hmm.
and send a packet to somebody on 2 meters.
Now, how did that happen? I'm not familiar with that, so you can enlighten us now.
Not sure, I got on JSA call.
This is,
An article,
this is why we have a great meeting of the minds here, that we figure it out. Would you turn on the lights? I appreciate it back there.
there, right at my house.
Wow.
I sent him-
There is a video on the hcra.org website on JSA call.
And I sent a message to a guy from Greenville,
Aaron,
and it's a very slow process.
Because JSA is FT8 with a two-way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
But I did it, it was a one-shot deal.
Yeah.
I got the message.
So, how long,
Yeah.
Dave, how long did it, you said it took a while. How long is a while?
90 seconds.
Well, not bad, really.
If you're camping somewhere, you need to get an SOS out to somebody, and you've got HF can't do it, it might be.
That might be enough.
Yeah. I forgot to act at fall, but using 20 meters, and I went back to look at the raw data and I hit like 7 or 8 different.
Wow.
HF IDs.
So this is it, trying new things and trying old things again. And that's what makes the world go around, right?
thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, more ways to play with more tools.
Yeah.
All righty, so a couple of things coming up with the club. Paul, why don't you give us the latest update on outgoing QSLs, the XQSL?
Okay, as unprepared as I am to that topic, I will make something up. Basically, I sent the last batch of QSL cards out, Thursday.
Okay.
So the next round, for all of you who want to sharpen your pencils, or I don't write them out anymore, I print stickers and stick them on the cards because it's a heck of a lot easier. Next round will go out shortly after March 15th. So you've got a couple of months to get them ready, get them to me, and to the league. So that's
Cool.
current status.
And for those of you that don't know, the club will take your outgoing DXQSL cards. Paul will organize them and we bring them to the league for them to go out in the bureau. So you don't have to do it yourself. It's a little thing that the club does that makes it easier to get your outgoing DX cards out. But you do have to be an ARL member to.
We pick up the fee, we pick up the postage, so the only cost to you is your time to fill out the cards.
And get them
And
to
get
Paul,
them.
which you can do at the HRA meeting. Great, thanks, Paul. Field day is coming up. Big activity with the club. We're looking for, have you decided to become the organizer for field day this year?
Well,
Not that we don't want to put you on the
not that the
spot.
president's not gonna be here.
The president's gonna be 1,000 miles south of here anyway.
Vice president back in his.
It will be acting
That's
in
right.
his place.
Okay,
But hopefully I'll be sending out a poll.
Yeah.
And, looking for volunteers. And, we're gonna make it simple, fun, looking at maybe some training activities if you're interested in. Power sources, definitely the antennas, wire antennas, so we're still playing with it.
excellent.
I think you can do polls on Groups.io, right?
Yes,
Yeah, you can do it right on the mailing list.
yeah, that's one of the reasons that we went.
That is, yeah.
We're still following up on a trailer, right?
There's that.
Ouch.
That's, yes.
Alrighty, great. So, all right, so that's good. So we now have a field day organizer. That's good. So who had coffee and donuts tonight? You can also thank Easy. our vice president,
Hey, I apologize. So next time.
And the cupcakes and everything.
Cupcakes, Smith.
Oh, it's good, okay. So we just asked for, $1 donation for a cup of coffee, $1 donut. $1 for a couple of cupcakes.
Yeah,
Or whatever.
I wanted a couple of beets and I couldn't eat the whole tray, so might as well.
Well, thank you for bringing them and, before everybody leaves, make sure you finish the donuts. And, who wants to bring the cupcakes home?
If I have to.
If he has to. Anyways, that's how you can use the money that it costs to make the, to pick up, pay for the donuts and to make coffee. And, Easy makes the coffee, he doesn't buy it brewed, right?
No, I make the coffee.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I did that the first time and learned my lesson. It's like, no, we're gonna use it.
Okay, great. Let's see here. In March, our guest speaker is going to be Steve Shore, W1ZEB, who's going to talk to us about DMR. And Steve was a member of this club way back in the early 70s. And he's still a member of the club, but he lives out in Simsbury now. And Steve, and I've known him for 40+ years too. Don't forget about the weekly net on what frequency, Gary?
Oh, hello. On the 10-meter net is 28.375.
At what time?
7 p.m. local,
Monday nights.
Monday nights.
Everybody's welcome to join us. You do not have to be a member of the club. And, it's on single sideband. It's not on FM. So come and join us. It's a lot of fun. Any other announcements or comments? I know Mount Tom has a flea market coming up the first Saturday in March.
Yes.
Second, I believe.
March 2nd, okay?
There's
About
their,
a month from
Campfest album, February 17th in Marlboro.
February 17th is coming up in Marlboro. I went last year, a good flea market, a couple hundred people attend and good vendors.
And Hampton a week from now. Anybody going?
Why you going to Hampton? Okay, good. Bring up, when you come back, bring some sunshine and
I'll
water.
know my best.
There was a strange item in the sky this afternoon around 1:30.
Yeah.
I missed that.
And it was kind of yellowish, but it didn't last long.
So you had a spot on your eye is what you said.
Yeah.
All right, so do we have any other comments or messages?
Big comment, once again, thank you, Ken, for such a great issue with Zero Beat.
For those that don't know, Ken puts in a lot of time putting Zero Beat together. But he's always looking for articles and hopefully everybody's reading it. Brian?
Yeah, I want to thank Gary for this stuff tonight, it's very useful.
Thank you.
All good information.
Thanks. Thanks.
Mike, he got me, and went out there, he got me to win that, and we did a lot of emergency communication from point A to point B. And I know that wasn't public tonight, but there's a lot of stuff in Windows that I'm sure Gary knows, we could have enough time for it, but we did a lot of emergency communication just for from point A to point B, just in case if we were able to get blackout. And we have no communication, some people say we need internet. There's a way of doing it that I did it to my computer without internet. Got the message to my beam, to the computer, to the radio, and got to a guy up in Canada. Picked up my information. If I needed to send information about Western Mass being bombed or being blackout, whatever. There are people out there that will pick up the signal if you can reach them and transmit the message you sent and also transmit it back. There's ways of.
You ought to do a talk at the next preppers meeting. I'd love
No,
to.
but this way, yeah, but, I think, you know, I haven't done it in a while. It's been a year and a half, so I'll get back into it. But there's a lot of stuff in my window. I'm sure Gary knows, and, it's, you know, it's a great thing. Besides, you send emails and messages back and forth.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Easy.
Question, Gary, you gonna post that power slide on the.
The website, yes,
Yeah.
you will.
Yeah, sure.
There's a lot of good information.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Any other comments or suggestions or whatnot? Cool. Everybody have a great evening. We'll see you next month. Drive safe and eat the donut.
Don't forget the donuts.